This episode of GunBlog VarietyCast brought to you by lawofselfdefense.com. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to learn about your state's self-defense laws. Sign up for one of their online or in-person seminars or buy the book Law of Self-Defense and get 10% off when you use the discount code VARIETY at checkout. That's lawofselfdefense.com/variety. Sit back, relax, and take a ride with us on the GunBlog VarietyCast, episode 69. Welcome back to the GunBlog VarietyCast. I'm your host, Sean from NC GunBlog, and with me today is Adam from Guns, Cars, Tech Blog. How are you doing, Adam?
I will be so glad when 2015 is over.
So right before you started recording, you ran back and you turned off the air conditioning.
Yes.
And right before Weer'd starts recording, he runs over and turns off his boiler.
Yeah. There's an El Nino going on, and so it's like 74 degrees here, and it's 2 weeks before Christmas.
El Nino, you live in Tennessee. You're nowhere near California. I don't want to hear no El Nino.
This one is in the Atlantic. I don't know.
I don't want to hear no El Nino.
Hey, so this morning I looked at the weather, and then I looked at the calendar, and then I looked at the map, and I said, one of these things is broken.
Everybody wants to talk about the weather. Nobody wants to do anything about the weather.
Oh, I do. When it's 4 degrees outside, I totally idle my SUV to, crank up some global warming. Looks like it's working.
So let's get started with the Tactical Dog and Fitness Report. 20.2 dog walking miles, and I'm done with work for the year, so it's vacation for the rest of the month. Yay.
Woo! Well, I finally got back on the treadmill after months off the treadmill, so I'm not dead yet, so that's good. There was sickness and then people in town and then sickness and then people in town.
Cool. You coughed earlier and I was like, oh, you ever going to either stop coughing or just die already? And you said, actually, you haven't been coughing. That was you aspirating some soda.
Yes.
So that's good to know. So you are feeling better?
Yes.
That's good. All right. Well, and now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette. This week, Erin's going to talk about managing stress with controlled breathing.
Come on, every pony. It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette.
Controlled breathing, Erin? Come on. I already know how to...
You are now breathing manually. Try not to think about the fact that you are consciously performing an unconscious task, deliberately inhaling and exhaling because you don't want to suffocate.
Oh, dear Lord.
Okay, so now that it's been demonstrated that the conscious mind can hijack the body's functions, let's talk about how this is useful in a stress situation. Controlled breathing, also called combat or tactical breathing, is a good way to reduce the anxiety you feel in stressful situations, be it confronting a fear like public speaking or claustrophobia, or being in a fight, or having to run for your life. Now, it isn't exactly something you can do in the middle of a struggle, but if you can take a minute beforehand to steady yourself, or afterwards to settle your nerves, you will find that controlled breathing relaxes you. And of course, if the situation isn't life or death, you can always take a quick break in the middle of the situation to help you maintain control. Now, the practice is actually very simple. Breathe in through your nose, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, while visualizing those numbers. Stop and hold your breath for a count of 4. Exhale through your mouth while counting to 4, and hold the empty breath for a count of 4. And you just have to do this 3 to 5 times. And that's all there is to it. But this would be a very short segment if that's all I said, so let's explore the how and why it works. There are 2 main types of breathing that humans perform. The first is thoracic or chest breathing, which is shallow. And these are the types of breaths you take when you're awake or active. The second is diaphragmatic or abdominal breathing, which is deep and slow, And these are the breaths you take when you're sleeping, or when you yawn, or when you have a particularly good stretch. They are the relaxed breathing. Now, when you take a deep breath, your stomach expands, and you fill your lungs with more air, which puts more oxygen into your blood system. That extra oxygen lowers your body's demand for blood, which lowers your heart rate. Now, everyone knows how awful and jarring it feels to have their heart hammering in their chest, and so anything which lowers the rate at which it hammers is a good thing to do in an emergency. And that extra oxygen in your blood goes to your muscles, which enables them to perform faster, longer, and harder, which is why so many athletes perform controlled breathing exercises right before a sporting event. Now, when you breathe in, make sure it's through your nose. Nasal breath flows past the vagus nerve, which sends calming messages to the brain and reduces heart rate and blood pressure. Breathing through the mouth, on the other hand, not only skips all this and bypasses the purpose of the nasal cavity, which is to warm and filter air, but mouth breathing also helps trigger the fight or flight response. So nose breathing is a 2-to-1 benefit here. Now, when inhaling, you visualize each of those numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. The visualization helps to slow you down, because when you are stressed, you are inclined to rush. Remember when you were a little kid, how a few seconds could be an hour when you were waiting for your parents, but when you were playing, it was just like that. Now, I recommend making the visualized numbers as silly and familiar as possible, like those old Sesame Street pinball count videos, the ones that went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, after you've inhaled, you hold it for another 4 seconds, visualizing those numbers again. And if you have the time and ability to stretch your arms like you do when you yawn, do so, because it will extend your breath and help relax your body. Then breathe out slowly. Exhalation by itself is relaxing. It's why so many people draw out their breath when they're stretching or sighing. And you can further improve its effects by saying or thinking relax as you breathe out, like this. Relax. And what's great about this technique is that unless you are breathing really loudly or making the really big stretchy motions, no one needs to know that you're doing it. So you can do it privately to settle yourself down. And finally, controlled breathing can save your life. In the show notes, there is a story about Tricia Kennedy, a police officer who in 2010 was shot in the head by a ricocheting .45 caliber round at a 3-gun event. She was going into shock, and one of the first responders told her that she needed to breathe or she'd pass out and die. By using controlled breathing, Officer Kennedy focused on the numbers instead of the pain. She resisted going into shock, slowed her heart rate, and survived. And she later went on to make a full recovery.
All right, Aaron. It was good talking with you. I'll see you again next week.
Take care, Sean.
If you'd like to read more from Erin, check out her blog, lurkingrhythmically.blogspot.com.
Felons behaving badly. Second suspect arrested in I-85 shooting that left man partially paralyzed. Now, this was an interesting story to me because this happened across the Thanksgiving holiday. I was coming home from my parents' house when I read about this. I think it was Sunday. I was on the way home, and I read about this guy that was in someplace near Charlotte, and he got shot in a rest stop, and he's paralyzed from the waist down, and I'm thinking, and people wonder why I carry a gun, especially when I'm traveling between Pennsylvania and North Carolina. I'm in and out of rest stops. I'm mostly in and out of Sheetz gas stations.
Right.
I planned that entire route every 2 hours from Sheetz to Sheetz.
Interesting.
Yeah. My wife is like, how does this work exactly? This is what happens when you let me do all the planning. A second man was arrested late Thursday in last month's Interstate 85 rest stop shooting that left a Gaston County father of 4 paralyzed from the waist down. Cabarrus County authorities said Friday that suspect 2, 29, of Charlotte, was arrested in an apartment in Queens, New York. Assisted by the FBI, suspect 2 was charged with attempted robbery with a dangerous weapon and assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious injury. Earlier this month, Cabarrus County deputies arrested suspect 1, 26, of Charlotte in connection with the same shooting of 43-year-old Greg McKee. Suspect 1 was charged with the same 2 offenses as suspect 2. In October, suspect 1 was released from prison after serving 5 years for robbery with a dangerous weapon. He was still on probation for that offense.
No kidding.
Technically, no, he wasn't on probation for that offense.
He was on parole.
Technically, he was on post-release supervision.
Oh.
But, reporters, what do they know?
Yeah.
Suspect 2 was released from prison after nearly 7 years in February, with his parole ending October 31st. He, too, was convicted of committing robbery with a dangerous weapon. McKee and his family were traveling south back to Gaston County the evening of November 28th when they stopped at the rest area near Dale Earnhardt Boulevard. While McKee used the bathroom, his family waited in the car. As McKee washed his hands, 2 men approached, one standing on either side of him. After one of the suspects showed a gun, McKee tried to run. He was shot in the back. The 2 men fled on foot. Placing information about the case on the Sheriff's Department Facebook page and notifying local and national news outlets, Leeds took investigators to an apartment in Queens where he was arrested and placed in Metropolitan Detention Center without bond. He will get an extradition hearing on the Cabarrus County charges, but authorities didn't say when. Pretty much I've already been told what kind of people these guys are, but let's go down it anyway. This is the new express method. I'm just going to list all the counts that he's been convicted of, but not the dates. Larceny of a motor vehicle, felon class H. Receiving stolen vehicle, felon class H. Second-degree trespass, misdemeanor class 3. Larceny of a motor vehicle, felon class H. Robbery with a dangerous weapon, felon class D. Suspect 2, the one that was just arrested. 2 counts of robbery with a dangerous weapon, felon class D. Robbery with a dangerous weapon attempted, felon class D. And armed robbery conspiracy, felon class E.
Lovely gentlemen. Lovely.
The 2 of them have actually relatively short criminal records, and that's because they've spent a lot of time in prison on their robbery with dangerous weapons charges.
Yeah, it was short, but that's because they're bad criminals and also particularly violent.
Who have spent a lot of time in jail.
Yeah.
So this week on Foreign Policy for Grownups, I asked Nikki if the recent attack in San Bernardino will change our foreign policy. Nikki, we've now seen a terrorist attack on U.S. soil in the vein of what happened in Paris a few weeks back. 2 Islamist terrorists went on a shooting spree in San Bernardino and killed 14 people. Will we see any changes in our foreign policy after this attack?
Surprisingly or not, no, I don't think we will. I've never seen an administration more disinclined to call terrorism terrorism or more intent on blaming anything but fundamentalist Islam on what went on in San Bernardino. We now know that this was almost certainly an Islamist attack on our soil, but I think it may be a little more complex than just a case of a couple of terrorists blowing up an office party.
What do you mean?
Well, when the attack first happened, I had taken some time to examine all the evidence we had at the time to see if I could make sense of it all. There was a lot of stuff coming out. Oh, it was an Islamist attack. It was this, it was that. It was workplace violence. So I blogged it on my site, and I blogged everything. And ultimately, once I synthesized all the information that we had at the time, I thought that the shooting in San Bernardino was an Islamist attack on our nation, but there was a little more at play. There were several outliers that just didn't make sense to me. I didn't see a whole lot of symbolism in this attack. We all know the symbolism behind the attacks on the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. It's possible that the November 13 attacks in Paris were significant because of the date. November 13 was the date that the Allied troops occupied Constantinople. Educational institutions are usually highly symbolic. Children are powerful symbolic targets. They evoke an emotional response. Beslan, Peshawar, Toulouse, Gorissa. Where's the symbolism in attacking a bunch of adults at a holiday party at a center where people work with disabled kids? Some people claim it was Christmas itself, the holiday party. That was the symbol. But this guy attended the same holiday party last year, and there was no incident. It's also curious that the Islamic State didn't take credit for this. They celebrate it all over social media, sure, but they're normally pretty quick to claim the murders as their own. And they haven't claimed credit for this, which is weird. They ultimately sanctioned the attack, but they still didn't claim credit from what I gather. ISIS has taken credit for other larger-scale acts of terror, including most recently the coordinated carnage in Paris last month and the downing of the Russian commercial airliner over Egypt in October, but only praised these two douchebags as martyrs. I also don't know if the police found anything that confirms a real motive and are keeping it quiet, or whether there really was nothing. If it's the latter, it's kind of surprising. Generally, jihadists like to leave these, flowery declarations and letters and videos, something, anything that confirms the violent jihad. This terrorist sow is now known to have pledged her loyalty to ISIS on social media, but generally they don't like to leave doubt as to their mission. As far as I know, there's nothing. That may change in the future, they might find something, but the fact that there was no note, no declaration, no video, or anything else that celebrates the glory of murdering infidels and giving themselves to their god, that's a bit odd. I also assessed at the time that San Bernardino is home to some pretty severe gang violence, and I kept wondering if that's why they had all that gear just ready to go. They got angry, they went home, they got the gear, bam, done. In the end, though, I eliminated that latter possibility given the number of pipe bombs found in their apartment. Also, I assessed, believe it or not, that we got off lucky. That there may have been a bigger attack planned, but this guy probably lost his temper at the party, as was reported, stormed out, and launched an unplanned, spontaneous attack on his co-workers, rather than waiting to execute a bigger event elsewhere that he and his wife probably planned. After all, these guys aren't well known for their even temperaments and impulse control. And if my assessment is correct, ISIS jerks are probably sitting around going, hey, what the hell? We were expecting this massive attack and solid message, and this douche lost his crap and decided to go off book. So what really scares me is that if I am right, we dodged a huge bullet, and whoever pissed this guy off at the holiday party probably prevented much bigger carnage. That really does not make me sleep well at night.
So what about our immigration policy? How will this attack impact it? This guy was a citizen of the United States. He was born here. And his wife was here legally on a fiancé visa.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? This woman was supposed to have been at least somewhat vetted when he brought her back from Saudi Arabia. In order for a K-1 visa to be granted, the applicant must show that both individuals are free to marry, all marriages that were previously, performed or legally ended, that the two individuals have met in person at least once in the past 2 years, barring any exceptions for long-established customs or extreme hardship. There are a number of documents also needed for a K-1 visa, including photographs of valid passports, police certificates from the fiancé's country of residence. Applicants who are granted the visa receive a sealed file of personal and government documents, which must be kept sealed until they are turned over to security officials upon entering the United States. There's not a whole lot of background checking for terrorist connections that is done here, and our immigration laws are fairly easy on spouses and family members. And yet the United Nations and the EU continue to pressure us to accept refugees whom we don't have the resources to properly vet because of lack of intelligence assets in their countries of origins. And despite this latest attack, I don't think much is going to change. We'll still be allowing thousands of refugees into this country, and there still could be one or two terrorists hiding among them. And while it's rare that refugees allowed into this country are found to have terrorist connections, it has happened. And thankfully, we caught the two jihadists from Iraq in 2011 before they could launch an attack. As I mentioned before, it only takes a few, and there are suspicious Middle Eastern types who are now trying to sneak into this country. So the question is, will the Obama administration change its policies and at least try to make this country a bit more secure? Or will it just continue to push for gun control in lieu of any actual measures that may not be popular with the international community, but could maybe save lives?
I think we may already know the answer to that one.
Yeah, pretty much. It's unfortunate.
All right, Nikki. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
You bet. Take care.
Nikki blogs at thelibertyzone.com.
Plug of the week. On the other podcast that I do, I had the opportunity to interview a lady called Emma Newman. Now, Emma does this really awesome science fiction fantasy podcast called Tea and Jeopardy. And it's this really bizarro author interview podcast where she invites people to her tea lair and she serves them tea and interviews them about their books. And she never interviews them. She just sort of has this lovely conversation with them and serves them tea, and they talk about the books, and then some mild peril happens and they escape. and it's adorable.
It sounds adorable.
It is adorable. She's just really a lot of fun to listen to. It's very British and it's very funny. It's the sort of thing that probably only she could pull off. And I love listening to it. My co-host from the other podcast absolutely loves listening to it. So we interviewed her for the last episode of the other podcast, and wonderful, wonderful interview. And then we read her latest science fiction book, Planetfall, and unfortunately, neither of the two of us really enjoyed it that much.
Oh.
But we love listening to her, and she narrated her own book because, of course, she actually is a narrator. Like, not just for her own books, like for other people's books. People pay her to narrate their books.
Interesting.
She's freaking good at it.
Good.
So I'm like, I listened to her podcast. I love listening to her narration. Even the book, I wasn't really a huge fan of it. It was a well-written book. And like, I could, you ever go to somebody's house and they put in all that work on the meal that they feed you, and you're like, wow. I mean, I could see it all, but I just didn't really like it. But I could see that you put the effort into it, and you just kind of feel like, wow, maybe if I just really like that kind of food, I would have liked it.
Right.
And like everybody else is like, ooh, it was really good. And you're just like, well, maybe it's just me. So I'm like, well, I'll try one of her other books. Well, I picked up, it's not her first book, but as she said, it's her first properly published book.
Right.
Not sure what that means exactly, but it was called Between Two Thorns. It was the first book in her Split World series, and it's this British urban fantasy. I want you to think Downton Abbey with magic.
Okay.
Work with me here. Take Downton Abbey.
Now, you do know that the demographic of this podcast probably doesn't watch Downton Abbey, everybody except for you.
Well, and your wife.
My wife doesn't listen to this podcast.
Yeah, but you know her and I know her, so that's good enough.
Okay. I mean, you and I can talk about this, but there's people right now going, where's the fast forward button?
Doesn't Oddball and his wife,
Panya,
I think they said something about Downton Abbey at one point.
They might.
Right, okay, so we got at least.
Okay.
We got us. Okay, so
okay.
In any case.
Moving along.
But so anybody who's ever watched any British show that has a butler in it, that sort of thing, take that, but then mix it with like modern England. It's set in London and Bath, and it's just this bizarre mashup of this crazy Victorian England with magic, and then like jarring modern London that nobody knows anything at all about magic, and the weird goings on between the two that they kind of don't interact. They don't know anything at all about each other, and it's super well done. It's like night and day different from the book that we reviewed and kind of really didn't like. I mean, it was well done, absolutely well written, just wasn't to our taste. And this Between Two Thorns was like right up my alley. It was like, this was awesome. So it was $6.37 for the Kindle on Amazon. And for an extra like $3, I got the narration that is done by Emma herself. And like I said, fantastic narrator, lovely British voice. And I'm driving to my next thing at work, and I'm listening to her tell me this story, and it's just this crazy. I don't really know how to describe it, but literally, if you've watched Downton Abbey, if you've watched Upstairs Downstairs, if you've watched any of these British movies, TV shows that have a butler and rich people and poor people sort of movies, there you go. It's one of that, plus magic. Pick it up. And like I said to you, Adam, since your wife watches Downton Abbey, she should try this. Check it out. It's pretty awesome. It was one of those, I got to the end of the first book and I'm like, yeah, it was really great. Oh, crap. Now I got to buy the other two.
Oops.
Yeah. So I picked up the other two right away. But they're, like I said, for $11, you can get not only the book, but because it's Amazon, you buy the book, and if you get for $3, you can get the audio version of it. You get the discount version of the audio right away. So I've got the links in the show notes, and keep in mind the Kindle Fire 7 is $50. Keep an eye on it. Over the Thanksgiving holidays, they dropped it down to $35.
Yeah, I saw that.
And keep a close eye on it. Maybe they'll do that again for Christmas.
And that's a much better tablet than the $35 tablet that I got last year. Let me just tell you.
My wife has one. I have one, but my wife uses it. I still use the HD6. That's my tablet.
Right.
But I saw that for $50. I'm like, oh, I'll buy that. So now I have 2 tablets, but my wife uses the 7. So it's a really nice tablet. And I actually use my HD6. In the hotel, I watched Netflix on it.
Well, there you go.
It's pretty cool. I've not tried to watch Netflix on the Fire 7 because it's not HD, but I did watch.
What? Whoa, wait, back up. What do you mean it's not HD? HD just means that it's got a 1920 by 1080 resolution.
Yeah, the 7 is not HD. The 6 is HD.
I'm going to have to look at some specs later, but okay. These things do not make sense to me.
I watched in the hotel on the hotel Wi-Fi, which was not the greatest Wi-Fi in the world.
Mm.
I watched Kung Fu Hustle on my HD6.
Oh, look at that. 1024 by 600. Yeah, it's not HD. What?
But what do you want for $50? Or $35 if you catch it on special. Check it out. Emma Newman, Split Worlds. The first book is Between Two Thorns, but there is a link in the show notes to all of the books. Give it a look. I think you'll like it. If you, honestly, there's got to be more than just me who watched and enjoyed Downton Abbey, who likes costume dramas.
I like Maggie Smith.
Well, who doesn't like Maggie Smith?
I don't know. If you don't like Maggie Smith, you're wrong.
Yeah, seriously. So one of our listeners suggested we do a book review, and Weer'd thought, hey, that's not half bad idea. How about I review this book I'm reading right now?
Hey guys, I heard that request for a book review. Of course, the Wrong Fun podcast is a place to go for fantasy and science fiction reviews. So I decided to review a different genre for this show. Over the Thanksgiving break, I read Castigo Cay, or Key, I never know how to pronounce that, C-A-Y spelling for a small island. It's by Matthew Bracken, and it's a thriller set in a near-future dystopia. What's really neat about this dystopian world is that it's not the crazy ones we're used to in Hollywood movies like Mad Max or Blade Runner, or even books like Fahrenheit 451 or 1984. This world is one where the United States has been totally taken over by authoritarian forces, turning the system of government into something more like a South American junta. Also, there's been a massive economic collapse, leading to massive unemployment and people actually having to forage for food to supplement what little they can buy. And devastating inflation of currency. Every time the character pays for something in US dollars, it seems like it's increments of hundreds or thousands of dollars, even if it's a relatively minor transaction. This dystopia is far more unsettling than other books that cover this dark future, because it feels like it's in arm's reach of us and frighteningly more believable. I don't actually remember when I got this book. I vaguely remember seeing that Mr. Bracken had put up the Kindle versions of several of his books for free on Amazon several years ago. So I decided to grab them, and promptly forgot about them. Well, later I was just skimming through my Kindle, just taking stock of what I had on my to-read list, and I saw this one. I'd completely forgotten about it, not even knowing if it was fiction or non-fiction, or what type of book it was, so I decided to read the first few pages. Yep, and I was hooked hard. I don't want to give any spoilers, but a basic outline of the first few chapters is introducing us to the protagonist Dan Kilmer, a retired army sniper, who after coming home from the war in the Middle East, acquired a schooner and is now living the life as an adventuring sailor, traversing the world and taking odd jobs where they present themselves. He has a small crew and a girlfriend who is traveling with them. The story starts with them being dead broke after a salvage job had fallen through, and his girlfriend Corey being impatient to go to Miami where she wants to seek her fortune. Having enough of the waiting, Corey leaves Dan and hops on a mega yacht owned by an American multimillionaire playboy bound for Miami. Dan is upset by this, but accepts his fate. That evening, though, a skiff approaches Dan's boat. It's another military expat, a former ranger named Nick. Nick shares with Dan the suspicious notion that the mega yacht headed the wrong way when it reached the channel, and about some mysterious things that he'd seen on Castigo Cay. I'll let you find out for yourself, but man, it didn't take long for me to get hooked on this book. Also, the book is written in first person in Dan's perspective, which I think adds to the thriller aspect of the book, as you can see his mind working around the course of events as they unfold. The book can be bought as a paperback or Kindle format on Amazon, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited if you subscribe to that service.
The book is Castigo Cay by Matthew Bracken. It's $7 for the Kindle version at Amazon. The link is in the show notes. And if you don't have a Kindle, you should think hard about getting one or getting the Kindle app for the tablet that you already have.
Fun with headlines.
So this one is fun on multiple levels, both because the headline is wrong and also the story is wrong. Law aims to make cell phone use illegal while driving in Tennessee.
Like, illegal completely? Like, you can't use a cell phone.
That's what the headline says.
Wouldn't surprise me. There's like states like that, isn't there? Like you can't even like use it hands-free, nothing.
I don't know if it saves anybody, but people are just still going to do it. I mean, I don't use my cell phone when I drive because I don't like talking to people, which is why we do this podcast. Blink, blink. A proposed law would make it illegal to use your cell phone while driving in Tennessee unless it's hands-free.
Okay, first problem.
State Representative John Holsclaw, a Republican from Elizabethton, says he plans on introducing the bill at the next legislative session. Right now, Tennessee leads the nation for the most fatal crashes caused by cell phone use. The state ranks higher than California and Texas combined, according to the National Security Council. Now, they say this National Security Council, but I don't think they mean the National Security Council.
Yeah.
They can't possibly mean the President's National Security Council.
Well, there's that, and I really think it's unlikely that Tennessee has more fatal crashes caused by cell phone use than the single most populous state in the Union, California, and the largest state in the lower 48 by land area, and the third largest by population?
Maybe. I don't know.
Fourth largest by population?
It does seem a little bit suspect.
Maybe only Tennessee has the check block, like called fatal crash caused by cell phone check block, and nobody else does.
Oh, yes. Actually, that would make sense. Yes.
Well, nobody else the National Security Council. You're definitely, that can't be right.
Yeah. Doug and Pat Rawls know the impact of those numbers firsthand. Their son Brian had graduated from the University of Florida in 2009 and landed his first job back home in Nashville. One October morning on his way to work, a woman driving the opposite way on I-40 heard her phone ring. She reached down to pick up her phone and lost control of her car. She went over the median and hit Brian's car head on. He died at the scene at the age of 23. If a law like this would have been in place in 2009, Brian would still be alive, said Doug Rawls. If you care about your kids, you want this law to pass. If you care about yourself, you want this law to pass.
Because if this law would have been in effect in 2009, she totally would not have reached down into her bag to pick up that phone. Because the only thing that would have kept her from doing that was the knowledge that doing something that grossly unsafe was the fact that she would have known she would have gotten a ticket for doing it.
Yeah. Right? Sounds plausible. You know what they should do? They should just put up signs that says no cell phone use.
What they should do is they should put up a sign that says, don't take your eyes off the road, lose control of your car, go over the median, and run into Brian's car head on. That would have solved the whole problem right there. Just one sign in that one spot in 2009, and Brian would be alive today.
The National Security Council released data that shows distracted driving kills almost as many people as drunk driving. So now, notice that we've switched from cell phone use to distracted driving. And then there's this. Their data also shows that hands-free usage is as detrimental to driving as putting your cell phone to your ear. So what we have is a headline that says they're going to make cell phone use illegal. The first line says that they're going to make it illegal to use your cell phone while driving unless it's hands-free. And then at the end it says, oh, and by the way, making it so you can use your cell phone hands-free is just as bad.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If Tennessee has this horrendous rate of accidents and deaths, in 2015, how many people have been killed due to cell phone usage on the roads of Tennessee?
According to the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, 2.
2 people.
2.
2 people. No. Seriously.
2.
How many people?
2.
200, right?
No. Just 2. Like you and me.
2.
2.
Were they in the same car?
I have no idea.
Hell, I could save 2 people with, like, the Heimlich maneuver.
Remember, if you don't support this law, you also don't like your children.
I don't have any children.
Well, you don't like my children. Or yourself.
2.
2 people.
So they're saying that Tennessee, 2 deaths due to cell phones was equivalent to all of the cell phone deaths in California and Texas combined.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Moving on. Barron is still on assignment and will return soon. The J Block. Why doesn't matter? I've been struggling to get downrange radio to download via iTunes. It's apparently something to do with Marshall Holloway, who's the producer for the show. Marshall Holloway did something to the updates. That's what Michael Bain said on Facebook. And we're not all saying that it's Marshall's fault. We're just saying that we're blaming him.
Well, there's a distinction without a difference.
Hey, we didn't say it was his fault. We didn't say it was something that he did. We're just saying we're going to blame him for it.
Okay.
Right. So, anyway, in the latest episode, Michael was talking about the San Bernardino shooting. For some reason, he kept saying San Clemente. Very early in the episode, Michael starts off with this very insightful statement. And he's talking, in this specific case, he's talking about militant Islam and jihad. And, well, why don't I just play the little statement?
I was quoting something that I'd said before in Trail Safe and that I've certainly said here. And that's why. Why is one of those questions that really doesn't do you that much good. And especially as it applies to a plague bacillus. You don't need to know the genesis of a plague bacillus. You don't need to understand its unhappy childhood. You don't need to understand its broken relationships. All you need to know about a plague bacillus is how to kill it. We're going to have to start thinking that way.
And if you think about jihad, the militant Islam, the people who want to kill you, and we're not talking about Muhammad, the guy who isn't trying to kill you. We're talking about, the ISIS head chopping jerks. You don't have to care about why they want to kill you. You just have to know they want to kill you and deal with them. Yeah, why is not really important.
Right.
You don't have to care about why.
And to a broader point, if you find yourself in a situation where there's a mass shooting, it doesn't matter if he's shooting at you because Allah told him to, or if he's shooting at you because there's a Planned Parenthood across the street.
Exactly.
It does not matter.
Right. In this episode, Michael was talking specifically, like I said, about jihadis, but it applies to a lot of circumstances. But when some ISIS couple, Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, come through the door, it's pretty pointless to wonder why. It's time to fight. If they're wearing a mask over their head, it doesn't really matter whether that particular mask over their head happens to be some kind of religious headgear or whether it's a KKK hood. It doesn't matter.
Or if he's wearing Joker makeup.
It doesn't matter. But it's also applicable in basically every single emergency situation. It doesn't matter why. There isn't time to wonder why. Why is this happening? It doesn't matter. Get the job done. Hey, Adam, why is that car spinning down the road in front of you while you're driving down the highway with your wife and 2 kids?
I don't know.
You don't care, do you?
Nope.
But Adam, if you don't know what caused it,
That doesn't really affect me.
The whys can be argued about after the fact, over a beer when everyone is safe and the only thing on the line is who pays for the next round. Right now, it's time to get the job done. Deal with the situation as you find it, get the job done, and we can spin lies and tell tales later. So check it out. I've got a link in the show notes. The way to get Michael's episodes right now, if you're on iTunes and they're not downloading for you, go into iTunes on your phone, search Downrange Radio, look for individual episodes, and force download the individual episodes. Look for 447 and 448. Those episodes are the ones that have refused to download. Force download the individual episode and you can listen to it. The episode that particular clip came from was episode 448. The title is Terror is Here - You Must Be Prepared. Episode 448, Downrange Radio. And now a word from our sponsor. You know what will happen. If you ever have to defend yourself, you're going to end up in handcuffs. Are you trained to win the fight after the fight? Sure, you can draw, aim, and put 2 in the 10 ring, but have you learned your legal self-defense? Do you know the law? Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for your legal self-defense class. Each class is tailored to the laws in your state. Attorney Andrew Branco will teach you the law. Not just what the law says, but what the judge's legal opinions say. What the jury instructions say. Sure, you could risk spending the rest of your life in prison because you followed the advice of some gun store counter jockey, or you could spend the day with the man who literally wrote the book on the law of self-defense. Carry a gun so you're hard to kill. Know the law so you're hard to convict. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for a legal self-defense class in your state. And make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to receive 10% off.
This podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlogVarietyCast.com and click on the donate or the subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly. A little help from you is a big help to us.
The airwaves are abuzz with the sound of Obama and his staff spouting off about the shootings in Colorado Springs and San Bernardino. Weer'd wraps them all up in a bow in This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery. So hey Weer'd, what do you got for us this week?
So Larry Correia has a great piece up called Guns and Vultures. It's about how misguided the anti-gun forces are when it comes to violence in this country. Is it really that bad? Well, let's listen to Attorney General Loretta Lynch.
That whatever the results of this investigation, we don't know a lot right now. But one thing is clear, that violence like this has no place in this country and in this nation.
This is a key point in all anti-gun pushes. They even published a handbook to make sure their fellow travelers behave the same way. Always push for your anti-gun agenda when the bodies are still warm and the facts are still unclear. She goes on.
Because we're at a point where these issues have come together, really like never before, in law enforcement thought and in our nation's history, and it gives us a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful moment to really make significant change.
Yep, when we say blood dancing, it isn't that far from the truth. She's holding a press conference on the cold-blooded murder of 14 people at an office holiday party by terrorists, and she calls it a wonderful opportunity.
Wonderful opportunity.
She doesn't give a damn about the dead. All she sees is a tactical opening for her pet agenda. But that tactical opening is only before the facts are known. Again, these killings are only discussed because they are useful to the anti-gun forces, and they are only useful before the facts are known. This is hardly the worst thing said. This is President Obama in Paris just after the shooting at a Colorado Planned Parenthood.
I say this every time we've got one of these mass shootings. This just doesn't happen in other countries.
Again, he said this in Paris, the city where they just had a massive mass shooting, one that was even greater than the mass murder spree done in Norway in 2011. Said in reaction to a crime that isn't even considered a mass shooting by the FBI, only by the brand new anti-gun standard where 4 or more people are injured, not necessarily killed. I call this segment Anti-Gun Nuttery for a reason.
You know, we are rightly determined to prevent terrorist attacks wherever they occur, whether in the United States or with friends and allies like France.
And then the very next week, 2 ISIS terrorists who were not on the so-called terror watch list, who had been planning their attacks for an extensive amount of time, murdered 14 people in California, and apparently had clean criminal backgrounds. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
My hope is that, once again, this spurs a conversation and action, and I will continue to present those things that I can do administratively, but in the end of the day, Congress, states, local governments are going to have to act in order to make sure that we're preventing people who are deranged or have violent tendencies from getting weapons that can magnify the damage that they do.
Again, standard anti-gun boilerplate. And again, these boilerplate solutions would have zero effect on the attacks in question. This is why they always act quickly, before the facts are known. Of course, ignore the irony that this was said in Paris, where their gun control laws make New York City look gun-friendly in comparison. Now on to the statements shortly after the San Bernardino shooting.
The one thing we do know is that we have a pattern now of mass shootings in this country that has no parallel anywhere else in the world. And there's some steps we could take, not to eliminate every one of these mass shootings, but to improve the odds that they don't happen as frequently. Common sense gun safety laws, stronger background checks, and for those who are concerned about terrorism, some may be aware of the fact that we have a no-fly list where people can't get on planes, but those same people who we don't allow to fly could go into a store right now in the United States and buy a firearm, and there's nothing that we can do to stop them. That's a law that needs to be changed.
So again, the president just got back from Paris, where they did have a spree killing. And there was that beachside massacre in Tunisia that the media hardly talked about. And of course the mass murder in Norway. Each one of these killing more in one event than we've had in a single year, no matter how you define mass shooting. He dives into the old saw of background checks like a broken record. Still, I wonder if he got some advanced intelligence before the media did about the identity of the shooters or how the attack was carried out to think it might have been an ISIS attack. Or maybe he's just thinking back to the Planned Parenthood shooting and simply wanted to put, as he puts it, bitter clingers on the terror watch list. Either way, he also talks about the terror watch list. Still, that was directly after the shooting and before the attackers were killed. 4 days later, here's what he said in an Oval Office address.
There are several steps that Congress should take right away. To begin with, Congress should act to make sure no one on a no-fly list is able to buy a gun. What could possibly be the argument for allowing a terrorist suspect to buy a semi-automatic weapon? This is a matter of national security.
What could possibly be the argument for not taking away a person's life, liberty, or property without due process of law? The Fifth Amendment, maybe? They are people who have never been convicted, indicted, or even charged with a crime. As far as we know, these people have done nothing wrong. People on this watch list haven't been charged with any crimes, haven't been seen by any judges, don't even know they're on the list. The worst part about this is the disgusting cynicism on display here. Obama knows that the amendment rejected in the U.S. Senate last week had absolutely zero to do with the 10,000-person no-fly list he keeps talking about. The amendment actually references to the 700,000 to 1 million-person terror watch list maintained by the Department of Homeland Security. This list is so extensive and so vague that they have an 8-year-old Boy Scout from New Jersey and 72 employees of the Department of Homeland Security on this terror watch list. No, we shouldn't be talking about what to do with the people on this super secret error-prone list. We should be scrapping the damn list.
We also need to make it harder for people to buy powerful assault weapons, like the ones that were used in San Bernardino. I know there are some who reject any gun safety measures, but the fact is that our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, no matter how effective they are, cannot identify every would-be mass shooter, whether that individual is motivated by ISIL or some other hateful ideology. What we can do, and must do, is make it harder for them to kill.
He brings up the assault weapons ban, which California not only has in place, but in spades. The federal ban that expired in 2004 banned any semi-auto firearm with 2 or more evil features, while California allows no features on any semi-auto gun with a detachable magazine. The guns used were illegally bought, but possibly illegally transferred, and definitely illegally modified by the killers. Obama failed to mention in his speech universal background checks like he did previously, possibly because California has universal background checks. And from my readings, the handguns were bought by the terrorists at a California gun shop. Laughably, the rifles were most likely illegally transferred from a neighbor and friend of the terrorists. They could have legally transferred and registered these guns, but when mass murder is your end goal, what's a little paperwork crime between terrorists? This just shows how pointless laws like these are. Obama is right. We can't find all the terrorists. I might argue we can't find any of them given how this game is being run. Still, Obama proposes to protect us, he will disarm us all. I propose something different. County employee office parties? Military recruiting centers? Fort Hood? What do these places have in common? They're all gun-free zones where the terrorists could go armed, but none of their victims could be. Maybe we should end gun-free zones and quit giving terrorists soft targets that make it amazingly easy to kill. The anti-gun forces are vultures. They don't care about public safety. They don't even care about terrorists. All they care about is furthering their horrendously unpopular agendas by dancing in the blood of the innocent, who were killed under their previous laws. We can't let up. We can't balk at this. We need to call out the anti-gunners for the ghouls that they are, and hopefully we will finally beat them back.
All right, Weer'd. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
In addition to appearing here, Weer'd is a regular host on the Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
Stuff that grinds my gears. Adam, why don't you go first this week?
So Weer'd touched on this in his segment, and it was actually something that I didn't know that this was kind of a thing until the Ace of Spades podcast from the last couple of weeks. There is a huge difference between the terror watch list and the no-fly list.
Yes, there is. That's how I found out about the difference, too.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, now that I know that there's a difference, it's like really annoying to me that other people don't know, which is stupid because 10 days ago I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a little difference either.
No. It's a huge difference. So there are about 20,000 names. Now, that's not 20,000 people. That's 20,000 names on the no-fly list, right? Like Ted Kennedy.
Didn't they say that there used to be 20,000? It's been pared down to 10?
Maybe. I think maybe it used to be 30 and then it was pared down to 20. But you know, between 10 and 30,000 names on this list.
Outside maximum, it's never been more than 30. I mean, it's just not that many people.
But of course, you know, the thing about it is, Sean, you know, you would think that you have a pretty unique name, but in fact, there is another guy named Sean Sorrentino.
He has a different middle name.
Right.
And he is, in fact, a criminal.
Yeah. So they put him on the no-fly list. Well, guess what? Now you're also on the no-fly list because you share the same name. I'm lucky in that I'm the only person on the planet with my name. So if I'm on the no-fly list, well, it's because of that donation that I made to the NRA or something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Terror Watch list has about 1 million people on it.
It's more than an order of magnitude difference.
Yeah.
And an order of magnitude. That's not like, you know, we're slightly off. And look, whatever you think of Obama, he's not stupid.
His teleprompter knows what he's saying.
So when he keeps saying, well, people can't be allowed in the airplane, they're not allowed to fly, well, you know, they shouldn't be allowed to have guns. He's not talking about people who can't get in a plane. He's talking about people that they're just sort of keeping an eye on because they might be involved in some little bit of, you know, maybe they're possibly somehow related to some people who are involved in terror. So maybe we'll keep an eye on them.
But it's a deliberate lie. It's you know, hey, I'm going to talk about this thing that not many people are on, but what I'm going to legislate is this thing that a lot of people are on. It's kind of like when they passed the assault weapons ban and they were talking about machine guns, but they weren't actually going to do anything with machine guns because those had been banned for 10 years almost. If they were on the up and up, they wouldn't have to lie, right?
Seriously.
It's the same thing with just about anything, right? If you figure out that they're lying about something, then you have to go, okay, well, why would they lie unless what they're trying to do is not on the up and up?
Seriously. And it's not even like that difficult to figure out a lie because it's in the congressional record what they were trying to pass.
Right.
It doesn't say anywhere no fly list. It says terror watch list.
Right.
It says right in there. It says, you know, basically anybody that the attorney general makes a determination is possibly going to do something, and you'd have to look it up, but it's right in the congressional record. So basically what they were attempting to pass was something that said basically anybody that the attorney general decided she, in this case, didn't want to have a gun, she could just sign a piece of paper and they didn't get to have guns.
Right.
That was it. That was all there was to it.
Because there's no potential for abuse there.
She signs a paper, no guns for you. It's like the freaking soup Nazi.
Yeah. You know, and then literally there would be nothing stopping them from saying, oh, well, the New York Daily News says that the NRA is a terrorist organization, so we're just going to say that anybody who's in the NRA is a terrorist, and now nobody in the NRA can buy a gun.
Right.
So the thing that I have said to people who are saying, hey, maybe this is a good idea, or hey, yeah, well, absolutely, why aren't we doing this? Interesting. What other constitutional rights do you think should be taken away by a government employee that you'll never know about?
I think that the next step would be to let's hire Orrin Hatch. He's still alive, right?
I think so.
Right. Let's just get, you know, our next president. We're going to have Orrin Hatch. We're going to get him back to be the attorney general again. Have Orrin Hatch be the attorney general, and he'll just start signing off on that. You know, he'll just start telling everybody that he doesn't want to have their rights.
Yeah.
And we're going to watch everybody go, oh, wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about Sarah Palin being in charge of that list?
Yeah, I've said that to some people. Oh, you want to watch some heads explode?
Well, that would never happen. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe somewhere there was this thing written down somewhere where it said,
if only there were an instruction manual.
Due process of law.
Yeah.
Life, liberty and property without due process of law. Those words stick in my head somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe if we just did a Google search on it.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. We're not constitutional law professors, so how could we possibly know?
Right. I guess we probably should just shut up and let our betters go on about their business.
Yeah. If we know what's good for us.
Definitely, if we know what's good for us.
How about you, Sean?
People who get mad at me when I ask questions.
Are we supposed to be talking about our wives on this podcast?
Actually, no, my wife actually thinks it's kind of funny when I ask questions.
Oh,
she
okay.
actually gets entertained. It's have you heard those social justice just so stories?
No.
No, come on now. You know, the people, they tell these stories and they're just so.
Oh, yes. The ones where it's like, that's a little too perfect of a story and not quite enough detail.
Yeah. So I had a kind of a strange incident that happened this morning. And guess where it happened?
I'm going to go with Facebook.
How'd you guess?
Because
Facebook. Okay, so this morning I come up on Facebook because, get up in the morning and grab the tablet and, it's time for a little nature calling. And there's somebody who posted something to Facebook, shared it to a friend of mine's Facebook feed. I come to figure out later she was like spoiling for a fight. And she had shared some other person's Facebook post or something from I think it was December 7th. And this woman had a very bad incident that she says happened to her in Chicago. She's riding a bus home in Chicago. She was dressed nicely, apparently, from an office job. She's accosted by a man who's wearing a suit who calls her racist names, which I will not repeat, and then spit on her. After this appalling behavior, she screams back at him, and until she screams, nobody helps her, which is more appalling behavior in my opinion. And then after she screams at them, they get the bus driver to stop. They kind of push the dude off the bus. I'm like, oh, that's pretty bad, Except there's no bus number. There's no time. There's no route. She doesn't say if it's the Chicago Transit Authority. She doesn't say it's the private bus company. There's no details. There's no ID for the bus. There's no, can't ID the bus, can't ID the driver, can't ID any witnesses. We can't pull any surveillance tapes. There's no way to prove that this actually happened. Because you know what? Somebody pulls a stunt like that. First thing I want, dude, to catch a knuckle sandwich. Be spitting on ladies on the bus.
Right.
Personally, I think you pull a stunt like that, a couple of people should have a chat with you. And they should show to you that sort of behavior is not acceptable on the bus by asking you to leave the bus. And if they're very kind, they should let the bus driver stop the bus and open the door before they throw you out the door. But in any case, they should turn you over to the police. Well, where's the bus number? Where's the surveillance tapes? We want to know this. And now I've got, wait a minute. So I made the mistake of asking the question. How many fake hate crimes have we seen?
Oh, lots. In fact, most of them.
Yeah, that's just the thing. So many fake hate crimes. Fake hate crimes are to the left what stolen valor is to the right. Except when people like me catch stolen valor people, we run those dudes out.
Right.
The left, they want to cover that stuff up. They don't want that exposed because they're building a narrative on the horrible thing that happened to you. Look at the world's terrible place because look what terrible thing happened to you. Oh my God, it wasn't true? Oh, we got to cover that stuff up.
Well, you felt like it was true and it was truthy.
Now, could this have happened? Oh yeah, absolutely. In a country with, 320 million people in it, there are some people with some pretty appalling manners. And quite a few who could use a punch in the nose. We had a husband and wife go shoot up a holiday party last week, murdering his own co-workers. So the idea that there exists people so damaged that they could act like this bus spitter, not that far-fetched. So there's no question that this could have happened. But that's not what's so strange. What's so strange is how this woman on Facebook, not the woman in the incident, I had no interaction with her, but this woman who posted it, how she interacted with me after I said, hey, where's the bus number, the time, the bus route? I was blaming the victim.
Well, of course you were.
I'm like, you very clearly don't have any idea what blaming the victim actually means. Because, if I said, damn it, Muslim woman, wearing a headscarf and looking all half Persian and stuff, you deserve it. That would be blaming the victim. But, asking for maybe some corroborating evidence so that we can find the dude, that makes me the bad guy? So I actually figured out what was going on here. See, this woman was using this incident to attack the candidacy of Donald Trump. You see, if some big fat jerk spits on a half Persian American woman in Chicago, it's Donald Trump's fault. Because Trump wants to keep the Muslims out of America. Yeah, I don't get it either. Men, dressed in suits or not, who spit on women in buses should be tossed off the bus by other men on that bus. And no one better ask Donald Trump anything about the situation. But in the rush to connect this story with some larger narrative, it became personal to this woman who posted it to Facebook. Way back before I was even born, the cry was, make the personal political. Well, there's a problem with that. When you make the personal political, inevitably the weak-minded end up taking the political personally. And because I asked a question, I was attacking her. And I was attacking her personally. And I had to be destroyed personally. And it was completely bizarre. And I'm still no closer to knowing whether the incident happened or not. And if it did, I'd like to see this guy caught and delivered to the magistrate. So if you're in Chicago and you know something, say something. And if you do see something like this go down, remind the person that good manners dictate we be polite to other people, no matter what their religion or their heritage. Try to use the minimum of force necessary to get your point across. Remember that there's ladies present. No sense getting any blood on their clothing if you can avoid it. Well, that's our show for the week.
Thanks again to Rob Allen for our music.
And Firearms Policy Coalition for their support.
And thank you for listening to the GunBlog VarietyCast.
Constructive criticism can be sent to Sean at SeanSorrentino.com.
And hate mail to WizardPC at GunsCarsTech.com.
Like and share us on Facebook.
Why do you still have Facebook?
Hey, where else would I get this story? And if you receive this podcast through iTunes, make sure to leave us a glowing 5-star review.
Show notes can be found at gunblogvarietycast.com/episode 69.
This is a URS production.